Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside Chat series. Thank you for joining. Today's topic is transformation in today's experience economy. My name is Jason Georgiorian, and I'll be your moderator today, and I'm also a principal at LGA Architecture. We created the Fireside Chat series at the beginning of the pandemic, and as a way to make a connection and provide a resource to our community. Some of our past chats have covered the places we design visitor experiences for, such as our urban centers, our community parks, our museums, our libraries, and other cultural places. Today, we will change the format up a bit and discuss the principles of in-person experiences and how that is evolving during these times. This will be our last chat for 2020. And we wanted to end our first year with a bang. And we're going to do this by discussing a topic that is especially dear to us. And of course, we're bringing in a very special guest to do so. A goal of ours at LGA, something we always try to strive to achieve, is creating unique visitor experiences that bring people together. So we're excited to present to you the internationally acclaimed author, speaker, and management advisor, B. Joseph Pine II. Mr. Pine co-founded Strategic Horizons LLP to help businesses design new ways of adding value to their economic offerings. In addition, Mr. Pine is the co-author of The Experience Economy, and this year, the third edition released for that book. Today, Mr. Pine will touch on how experiences are even more important to COVID and post-COVID recovery. So just a little bit of webinar logistics. Everyone except the panelists will be muted today. However, there's a Q&A button somewhere on your screen. Please find that, ask questions at any time. We'll do our best to get those answers for you before we're done here today. We're also being recorded. If by chance you miss any piece of today or you want to go back and watch again, don't worry. Next week, you'll see an email with a link to this recording, in addition to our past webinars, our past Fireside Chats. So please take a look at those and let us know what you think. I'm gonna turn it over to Craig Galati and Mr. Pine, and we'll jump right into the dialogue. So thank you.
Great, Jason, thank you so much. This is really exciting for me. Joe, the experience economy has really transformed our firm. We began discussing concepts around it back in the early 2000s. Right after the black covered book came out. And you know, it was before Starbucks was Starbucks. It was, things were, you know, the concepts resonated with us. We didn't know what to do with them completely, and we're still working on it. And I think it's a work in progress forever. But a couple of years ago, we had kind of made a strategic goal in the firm to be known for creating visitor experiences, be known for not only creating great experiences for our clients, but for our clients' patrons. And so together as a group, we read the second edition.
Okay.
And we read it as a group, and it was very great for us. So I want to kind of open up today. I don't know how many people, I'm sure there are people have heard of this concept, this book, this profound research grouping. But I wanted to know, maybe you could start off, just give us a little bit about the premise of the book and kind of what it's really all about.
All right, happy to. And I want to thank Jason for that introduction, and Craig, you and Jason, to have me on this fireside chat here. Really appreciate it. And so, yeah, you know, the basic premise of the experience economy is something that so many people who've even read the book still don't quite get. And that is that experiences are a distinct economic offering, as distinct from services as services are from goods. It's basically when you use goods as props and services as a stage to engage each and every individual in an inherently personal way that creates a memory of the experience. And so because it's a distinct economic offering, it means that there's a distinct economy where experiences become the predominant economic offering, supplanting services which were the basis of the service economy that came to the fore in the 20th century, which superseded goods, which were the basis of the industrial economy that began in the late 18th century, which overcame the agrarian economy based on commodities, which lasted for millennia. And so today, you know, we wrote the first book, first edition, the one with the black cover that you mentioned. We talked about the forthcoming, the emerging, the nascent experience economy, and you know, now we say it's here, right? We're in an experience economy. In today's experience economy, where experiences again have become the predominant economic offering, where people prefer experiences over services and over goods, where people actually want goods and services to become commoditized, meaning treated like a commodity, where they don't care about the brand, they care about the features, they're all pretty much the same anyway, where they come to care about three things and three things only, and that's price, price, and price. You know, so they want goods and services to be commoditized, to spend their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time on the experiences that they value. And so that's what's going on, and that's what we've been shifting into this experience economy.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's since I first read the book in the early 2000s, you can see it. You can see it changing. You can feel it. You know, and I loved, you know, but how did you come up with this? How did you understand this? You know, what was the impetus for you and Mr. Gilmore to write a book like this that 20 years from now, you know, 20 years later, we're feeling and we see it?
Right. It's funny you say that, because when the book first came out, and even before that, where we were talking about it and had published some articles, including the Harvard Business Review, I used to have to argue with people, right? I used to have to, you know, show statistics and show why this is happening and do all these different things. And now I don't. I just have to say it, and everybody goes, "Yeah, I get that," right? Even if they don't see it yet. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, even back 20, 25 years ago. And the genesis of it was, in fact, I think almost 27 years ago. So it came out of my first book on mass customization. So mass customization is about efficiently serving customers uniquely, giving everybody exactly what they want and doing it at a price they're willing to pay. Something that also was felt to be very futurist in the late 80s and early 90s, but you know, in fact, a lot of companies were doing it. Now you can see just more and more that's going on as well. Jim, my partner, actually read the book when he was a consultant with CSC, and he said, you know, he said his reaction was, "Oh shoot, somebody else has already written it," because he was thinking about these same things. He wanted to write a book on it. So he contacted me shortly before I left IBM to start my own firm. And then he became, you know, my biggest client for the next few years. And eventually we said, "Hey, let's go in on this together." And so what I discovered way back when is that mass customization automatically turns a good into a service. So if you look at the classic distinctions, goods are standardized, services are customized. They're done just for a particular person. Goods are inventoried after production, but services are delivered on demand when the customer says this is what they want. And goods are tangible, but services intangible. So part and parcel of mass customization is the intangible service of helping customers figure out what it is that they want. You know, so if you mass customize a good, you know, whether that is, you know, all the apps and everything you do to make your phone customized to you, whether it's a Coca-Cola that you customize in their freestyle machine, whether it's a Dell computer, whatever it might be, you mass customize that good. You're helping your customers design exactly what they want, and define it. Then you make it. Then you deliver it to them, right? Because we make goods, we deliver services. And so at one time, I said that to a class that I was teaching, and one of the guys in the back of the room was sort of a smart aleck, and he raised his hand. He said, "Well, you know, you talk about mass customizing services as well. What does it turn a service into?" And I said that mass customization automatically turns a service into an experience. And I went, "Whoa, that sounds good." You know, literally, it was just this thing that came out of my mouth. And as soon as I said it, I said, "Yeah, man, I got to write that down. Hold on a sec." And so I realized that was true. That if you design a service that's so appropriate for this particular person, exactly the service that they need at this moment in time, then you can't help but make them go, wow, and turn it into a memorable event, turn it into an experience. So that meant that experiences were a distinct economic offering, as I said before. That meant there'd be an economy based off of experiences, as I said before. And so I shared that with Jim, and then he loved the ideas. And so we immediately started thinking about how to turn it into a book with some articles first. And so the rest is history, but that's where the impetus came from.
Wow. It's amazing how that flash of brilliance came at a time we didn't expect it. You know, a lot of us sit and think and think and think, and then later, you know, something pops into our head that makes so much sense.
Yeah, the only surprise was it wasn't in the shower, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's where the ideas come, or when I'm trying to go to sleep.
Yes, I know that feeling.
I've always been amazed with the whole concept about, you know, a good, and how, you know, Starbucks took a coffee bean and turned it into an art form.
Right.
And but I think there's much more to that, you know. And so I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, you talked a little bit about the good, the commodity, and, you know, I've been in the service business, and we always are preached to try to make it more customized and more experiential for our clients. But there's more to that, even because, you know, the whole notion of transformation is kind of
Right.
something I'm interested in, and where the customer becomes the changeling, or what you're trying to help them change their behavior or their organization as part of what you do. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is actually there at the very beginning, because one of the things Jim and I always do is that we're always asking what's next, right? So we got that. So what's next? And we look at, okay, what's next after experiences? What will be the next thing? And so we realize that there's this basic heuristic where commoditization drags you down year after year after year, right? If you do nothing, you'll become commoditized. It's like the law of gravity. But customization lifts you up. Customization automatically differentiates you. So it's the anti-commoditization. So can experiences be commoditized? Sure. In fact, experiences may be the easiest economic offering to commoditize, because the second time you have an experience, it may not be as good as the first, third time not as good as that. And pretty soon you get your customer saying, been there, done that. That's the hallmark of a commoditized experience. So using that heuristic, what does customization turn an experience into? And we realize that if you customize an experience, you design the exact right experience that this person needs at this moment in time, well, then you can't help but turn it into what we often call a life transforming experience. In other words, an experience that changes us in some way, and that we call a transformation. So a transformation is the fifth and final economic offering. In this progression of economic value, we now use experiences as a raw material to guide people to change. And many businesses are naturally in the transformation business. You think about fitness centers. You know, why do people go to fitness centers and endure all that work, sweat, and pain? Because they think the gain will be worth it. They want to become more fit. Why do people go to psychiatrists and spend a couple $100s an hour only to be asked, well, what do you think? Because they think they'll become better in some way. So healthcare is in the transformation business. Fitness centers, I mentioned, management consulting, B2B transformation, coaches of all stripes of transformation, universities and so forth. They're all really in the transformation business, which means they have to be in the experience business first, right? Because all of these are built on top of each other. That you got to be good in all of them in order to get that result that you want. So there are many companies that can help create transformative experiences that basically help us achieve our aspiration. And there's no greater economic value you can create than to help somebody achieve his aspiration.
Oh, that's fantastic. You know, one of the concepts of the book that I know I struggled the hardest with, and I'm starting to get it, I think, but the notion about work is theater.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about that we all have a role, whatever role we play in our firm, we have a role in creating experiences for our clients. And there's also many of us on this call today that also create experiences for our clients. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about one of the central pieces of the book about staging experiences and work as theater.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, you extract commodities, you make goods, you deliver services, you stage experiences. And what does that mean? Is that you intentionally design all of the different elements to come together in a way that creates impressions inside of people, that engages them, and again, creates that memory. So once we hit upon staging as the right economic function, right? It's the right verb for what the economic function of experience is. It was a short leap from there to be able to say, well, then work is theater. And Jim and I can both remember the conversation we had over the phone where one of us said it. We can't remember which one, but it was basically that. It said, well, if you're staging experiences, then your work is theater. And that's really true. And it's not a metaphor. We don't mean work as theater. It's a model. We mean work is theater, that whenever workers are in front of customers, the guests of the experience, they are on stage and they are acting, and they need to act in a way that engages the audience. And we're merely saying work is theater. Irving Goffman wrote this famous book in 1959 called The Presentation of Everyday Self, where he said, everybody acts all the time. And there's some guy named William Shakespeare who once said, all the world's a stage and we are all merely players. So there are some people say that it's that way all, because we all know we act differently when we're in front of our colleagues and our boss, and in front of friends versus strangers, in front of our parents versus kids. And it's not that acting is inauthentic or fake or phony. It's simply that we intentionally choose what parts of ourselves to reveal to those in front of ourselves. So that's what acting is all about. So companies need to direct their workers to act, give them roles to play, help them characterize those roles, and then perform them on the business stage. And so as architects, as designers, you're creating the business stage, right? Whether it's a museum, whether it's any sort of visitor attraction, whether it's a retail store, whether it's an office that has people come in, whatever it might be, is that you're creating the stage on which performances will happen. And you need to take that into account. You need to recognize that how do we do that in a way that allows the people that are here to be able to engage their audience in that business performance.
Kind of explore a little bit with you on this. I remember when I was first learning business, you have a meeting and you're always taught to be prepared for that meeting, to create an agenda and to, run a meeting a certain way. And I think that's the kind of the first cut of staging an experience. Mm-hmm. But then, we've evolved into doing design charrettes where they may be for a whole half day or a whole day charrette, where you really need to, provide something that engages somebody for that long. And, it's like you think about them as if they purchased a ticket to this right. performance that you're going to help orchestrate to them, but it has to be engaging for them so they can be part of it. It feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah. Ideally, you're actually making them pay a ticket.
Yeah.
One of the things we said is probably most controversial in the book is we said that in the future, retail stores and restaurants and manufacturers and all these diverse amount of companies would charge admission for the experience because you are what you charge for. And if you charge for undifferentiated stuff, you're in the commodities business. If you charge for tangible things, you're in the goods business. If you charge for the activities your people perform, you're in the services business. But economically, this is what differentiates as an economic offering. You're in the experience business if and only if you charge for time, the time your customers spend with you, right? That's what they value with an experience. And that means charging an admission fee or a membership fee, initiation fee, a per play fee, and other different ways. We got a framework in the book that describes 6 different ways that you can charge admission. And now we in fact do see scores of retailers and restaurateurs and manufacturers and tourism areas and business to business companies and all these others that are charging admission for the experience that they're charging for time. Now, it may not be the whole place. It may not be the total amount of the offering. They may still be charging for services and still be charging for goods. But it does what charging admission does is it sends a signal that this is a place worth experiencing. And then gives you the wherewithal to be able to create that great experience.
Oh, wow. Got a question, Jason?
Yeah, I think this is probably a good time to answer this and I think you may have just answered the question from the audience, Joe, but The question is, can you give us a working description of services versus experiences and how you differentiate them? It sounds like a mission is one of the answers to that question.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, and economically, it is that is what you charge for. But I talked about the distinctions between goods and services, and similarly, you have the distinction between services and experiences, where goods are standardized, services customized, experiences are personal. They're inherently personal. In fact, no two people can have the same experience, because where does the experience actually happen? It happens inside of us. It's our reaction to the events that are staged in front of us. So that's why you need to reach inside of people and create that experience within them. Where experiences are, goods are delivered, or goods are inventoried after production, services are delivered on demand, experiences are revealed over a duration of time. And it's really, and this is again crucial, time is the crucial thing with experiences. And let me here quote an architect, famous architect, late architect that you all will recognize, and that's John Jurdy. You know, John Jurdy, one of the, if not the first experience architect, the person who coined the term placemaking, which we, in our book on authenticity, we talk about a lot. And what he says in one book is that experience design is the design of time. It's the design of time. And that's what as architects or any other experience stagers need to do. It's not about designing the static building and what this building, and Jurdy referred to as the movable experience, the experience that happens as people flow through the spaces that you create, and that you need to design the time that they spend with you, right? So that's key with experiences, and you know, as a key differentiator for services. Services, you want to spend as little time with as possible, right? Ideally, you'd like it boom. That was so great about Uber, right? I could call a cab out of the thin air as if I had superpowers, and it was there, and it just boom, boom, and I get out, don't have to do any transaction. It was incredibly convenient, and that's what we want with services. We want services to be nice and easy and convenient. And in short, what they are, and this is sort of the quickest way to think about it, is that services are time well saved, right? Services are time well saved, that people want them nice and easy, convenient. They want to get in and out as quickly as possible. Experiences are time well spent. The people actually value the time that they want to spend. And it doesn't mean that they want to spend all day in some experiences. Some, you know, the experiences are designed for a certain amount of time, but they value that time in there. And in general, they're absolutely going to want to spend more time in them than they do in plain old vanilla services.
Great distinction. Thank you.
Great. Well, let's stick with this concept of time, because that is what the new book has, the preface about time. And, you know, we're in a world right now where there's so much media, so much social media, so much challenges, channels. There's so much noise in the marketplace right now, and we're competing for a piece of that from somebody, right? You know, so how do we compete for time? And then what does that mean in terms of relation to attention and money? I'd like you to maybe explain a little bit about the preface of the new book.
Yeah, sure. Right. So in the subtitle of the book that we focus on in that preference is competing for customer time, attention, and money, because these are the currencies of the experience economy. And time is limited. We only got 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in which to spend our time, and we got to sleep in there sometime. But if I am spending my time with some other company and they've captured my time because of the experience they create, what am I not doing? Is I'm not spending that time with you. And the same way, attention is increasingly scarce in our media fragmented world with 500, 1,000, 1,500, maybe infinite channels on our TV and all the social media that you just talked about, Craig, is that we have limited attention. It's scarce. But if somebody does create that experience, I'm spending my time with them and giving them my attention, then what am I not doing? Is I'm not giving that attention to you. In the same way, money is consumable. If I have $1 to spend, I spend it with some other company in some other geographic area, some other industry even, what can't I do with that dollar again? Is I can't spend it with you. It's gone, it's consumed. So we need to understand is that's why experiences are so important in today's experience economy, because it's the only way you capture people's time, attention, and money. On time, also, I'll mention that when I talk about the design of time, is one that's the same with digital experiences as is with physical experiences. We still need design. We need to view the screen that we have here as the medium for the experience, right? So it's less like a stage play, more like TV that we're doing, where we should have good lighting, better lighting than I have right now. But we should have good lighting, we should have good sound and so forth. And I have to make bigger motions in front of my face to get people to see that and remain engaging, as opposed to if I have a full play, I could be using my entire body and more space and so forth. And so keeping with work as theater, we need to create experiences that are dramatic in particular, right? They're dramatic, and drama again is the design of time. There's actually if you go to theater school, one of the things you'll learn is what's known as a Freytag diagram, right, for dramatic structure. Gustav Freytag was a 19th century German performance theorist. He's the first one to really diagram what the structure of plays were. And he recognized that there's a structure. I won't go through all the details of it, 7 stages, but basically the play starts, and then there's an incite insert where it goes off and it rises to a climax, and then it comes back down again. And that's the design of time. How do we design time to rise to that dramatic structure or that climax and come down again? Whereas most people, particularly, they don't recognize that they're competing for time, attention, and money. Their experience looks like this. Right? Nothing much ever happens. You're not going to get people's attention. So therefore, they're not going to spend time with you, and therefore, they're not going to give your money. That's particularly true of retailers today. You got to give a reason for shoppers to come into the store through the experiences that they have in there.
Yeah, you talk a lot about engaging all the senses too, and to relate a little story, we in our office is in an old bread factory. And when we moved in, we decided that it would just be good if we made bread occasionally.
Sure.
And so we set it up and we would make bread. And it was funny that we do it on a certain day, and clients would kind of make it to our office when they knew the bread would be ready. And so
are you like Krispy Kreme? Do you have a sign out front that says hot?
No, but it's funny how, but that led us to say, well, maybe we should be intentional with this.
Yeah.
So let's schedule a meeting that, is the middle of the meeting is when the bread smell starts to hit, and all of a sudden that meeting is different, right? And smell is so critical to create these beautiful memories, which you've talked about, but I believe the memories are kind of a currency. That's what gets somebody to call you back. It gets somebody to go to your venue again. Is these memories that get embedded in us, and takes multiple senses to get them stuck in there.
Right. Well, and I love how you're applying it because you can to B2B experiences. Right. So there may not be as many B2B experiences as there are consumer experiences, but there's a ton of them, and something that B2B companies need to understand because business people are people first. They're human beings. They want to have experiences. And if you can, in your particularly when you have your own place where you're bringing clients to, you can control it. You can therefore stage. You can be intentional about it. I love that you use that word. Then you can create a wonderful B2B experiences. And all experiences are ones that we take in through our senses. That's how we experience things, through our 5 senses. So the more you engage, the more senses you engage, the more particularly you engage each sense, again, being very intentional about it, then the more engaging it's going to be, and therefore create that memory that is the hallmark of the experience.
Right. And then the notion you talk a lot about, a memento or a takeaway, right? That also then. Yeah. Yes, that makes it so you also have another recall opportunity for these experiences.
Yeah, memorabilia is wonderful because it's sort of a natural human being thing. I think is that we want physical artifacts as reminders of the experience that we have. And if you give or you sell or you, as we put it in the book, mix in. If you mix in memorabilia, then people will have artifacts to remember. The chance that you've just increased the half-life of your memory because of that, and you've increased the chances they'll see it, they'll want to come again, and they'll want to tell others about it. Now, you also mentioned, Craig, social media earlier. And one of the things with the rise of social media, though, is we've changed that design principle with this edition of the book here in 2020 from not just mix in memorabilia to mix in memorabilia plus media. right? That people want to share things on social media is now becoming second nature for so many people that are younger than us, but for the what will soon be, if not already, the majority of people. So how do you design things that allows them to take their pictures, that gives them momentum? There are places that exist solely for being able to take pictures and put them on Instagram, right? They call Instagrammability, right? What's the Instagrammability of your experience? You need to think about that as well. When you come out with the bread, is there a way for, as people start to get into that and butter it needed, right? Maybe you've got a photographer there that is taking a picture as a memorabilia of that experience, or as the virtual reminder of that experience that you can share and use as well.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much. You can just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper in this stuff. It's fantastic. On the call, I know we have some other designers, and we have museums, people, museum directors and staff. We have people from schools and parks and recreation clients on this call. And I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about how do those businesses apply the principles of the experience economy?
So there's so many different ways with all those sorts of business. Some of those businesses you talked about are I mean they've always been part of the experience sector. Museums in particular, right? Museums are always been experiences. They have long charged admission. They should charge admission. I remember once being in Finland and doing some events and talking to people about the fact that the museum sector in Finland is sort of moribund and nobody goes to museums. And I said, well, I bet that's because you don't charge admission. Well, they said, yeah, how did you know? I said, because if you charged admission, you'd send a signal that it's worth it, and you would have the wherewithal to create a better experience, right? As I alluded to before. I said, what you should do in Finland is you should put an admission fee on all the museums. You should get the tourists, or all the people like me that are going to museums from out of the country that aren't paying their tax dollars. So they'll support it with their admission fees. And then for the citizens inside of it, is that send everybody, every man, woman, and child in the country, a voucher for a free visit to a museum that actually costs money. And guess what? The number of visits will go up, right? Did they do that? No, but they should. And so, museums in particular would be good to have what we call robust experiences that hit the sweet spot of four realms of the experience that we talk about as entertainment, educational, escapist, and aesthetic. And the American Association of Museums long ago defined museums as either an aesthetic or educational experience, which I always thought was interesting, right? But hey, let's not neglect the entertainment and the escapist. And now, of course, every museum that's been designed in the last 10 or 15 years since the rise of the experience economy absolutely has active things that you can do. It's not just about looking at the art or examining the sculptures and so forth. It is about entertaining as well as providing activities that they can do. And that's a key thing with museums. And all the parks and recreation, those are more on the active end because you want people out there and active, but also, what's the aesthetic experience of just hanging around and being, right? In a park, that's a big thing. So think about how you do that as well as add in the other elements. Schools, I think you mentioned, are one is they should really view themselves. Well, first of all, I'll say, right, there's a term that's been coined in education called edutainment, right? Edutainment, which is educational plus entertainment, because guess what? It's about holding attention. And if you're entertaining, if you have jokes, if you're having fun, people will pay more attention and they'll learn more as a result. A lot of educators want to try and poo-poo that and not do it. But edutainment is the key thing. But there's also, think about this, eduscapist, right? To coin a term, eduscapist. Well, we're educational, but we're actually escaping. We're going out and we're doing things. What's that? That's called a field trip. So think about all the different ways you can do that. But schools in particular should really think of themselves as in the transformation business, not just the experience business. Right. And it's not that they necessarily think of their students as customers. In fact, if you think of most schools, particularly up through grade 12, the customer is actually the government, or it's a citizenry. If it's a private school, you could say the parents are the customer, because it's the one who, your customer is the one who pays you money, right? And the one who pays you money is who you need to cater to. And schools are really about turning kids into productive citizens, helping them have not just not just exist, but have a healthy life, have well-being in your life, being able to find a purpose in what you're meant to do and so forth. And so often we don't do that at all. And if they view themselves as the transformation business, then they'll better design the set of experiences for each individual student, because every person is unique and needs to have that geared to in their education.
I can explore a little bit about this dramatic experiences. You kind of brought it up, and I think it fits in here right now. But I love the model of enticing and entering, engaging, exiting, and extending. We use a process in our design that we call the adroit, and it's not something that we invented, but we've kind of applied it to architecture, where it's more been used as an interpretive model, where there's arrival and decompression and reception, orientation, interpretation, and transformation, because we think that's a byproduct of these experiences. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about maybe the relationship between these things, and then I really want you to elaborate on extending, because I think there's a key here that I would like to really explore.
Right. So one, I love that adroit model. If you know the references to it, since you say you didn't come up with it yourself, then I'd love for you to send it to me so I can take a look at it. And in the same way, I didn't come up with these 5E models. It's actually a consulting company in Chicago, now part of Deloitte, called the Doblin Group. And originally they had it as, let me think, right, they had it as attracting, entering, during, exiting, and extending, I think. And so one of our certified experience economy experts, Kathleen McDonald, one of the things she did is she turned them all to 5Es, and then she inged them. So it was actually, as you said, it's enticing, entering, engaging, exiting, and then extending. And what is it? It's another dramatic structure model, right? It's just like the Freitag diagram, which has 7 stages. This one has 5 stages. I can talk about 3 and 1 stage models as well if you want, but it's a great one that I use all the time now. And so so a part of adroit starts at arrival, which is the entering of it, but you need to think about enticing. How do you get them to want to belong? The admission fee is one thing, because it sends a signal that, hey, there's something here to experience. 2 is, there's another great book by Dean McCannell, I think is at USC, called The Tourist. And one thing he points out about tourist attractions is that they have markers for the experience. And the simplest example, you're riding on the highway, you see a sign that says Vista View, marker, right? Pull off, be able to see the experience. You now have, the government now has all those signs. Hey, there's a water park at this exit, and there's a cafe at this one, and so forth. And so experiences need markers. Again, the signal that says, hey, there's something here. Now, one of the beauties of Las Vegas is that they turn the markers into experiences themselves. Right? Beginning with the Las Vegas sign out of town, on the south end of town on the Las Vegas Strip, with the lights going, and people are stopping and taking their pictures at the city limit sign, right? What other city limit sign have you ever seen out there where people go out and get their pictures taken? And so they turn that, and then you look at all of the themed casinos, that Steve Wynn really brought to the town, beginning with the Mirage, that said, hey, the place is an experience. And so you can see some of that too in the famous book, Learning from Las Vegas, about ducks and that, where you've created this experience. So that's one of the things with enticing, get them to entice. The water show at Bellagio is an enticing experience. You get people to come and then spend their time and money inside the casino and so forth. And then on entering, you've got arrival, and which is basically the same thing. So what's your first impression? What is your first impression that you have, and how do you get people to sort of reorient themselves from the outside world? And I love the term decompression, because one of the words I just love is liminal, or liminality, right? To use the noun. And liminality is, we generally only know the term from the term subliminal, which means below a threshold. Liminal is the threshold. And it's the in-between space. It's neither this nor that. It's betwixt and between. And to be able to design for liminality is, I think, a key thing that architects and designers need to do, recognizing it's not just liminal space, it's liminal time. The time is neither, the space is not out there nor quite in here, it's in between. And the time is not either before or after. There's this liminal time there. And that's what I love about decompression and getting them. And then the reception of what you're doing in there, it relates to different levels of then the engaging, right? The engaging is the meat of the experience. I mean, all 5 phases need to be engaging, but it's the meat of the experience, and it deserves its own dramatic structure all unto itself. It's why people come, what they're looking for, and then the exiting is what happens last. If you're familiar with Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in psychology, I actually had the opportunity a year ago in Moscow to interview him on stage, which was just a joy to be able to do that and talk to him backstage. And I learned so much from that. And he has this peak end rule. He said, basically, put your money at the peak, the climax, the engaging, and put your money at the end, where the exit happens, because people tend to remember that more. I think that's a good rule too, is what's that last thing happens that people remember more. So then you get to the extending that you said you love so much. I understand what you have to say about it, but how do you extend the experience? And so memorabilia is a way of doing that. The shared media is a way of doing that, but there are also things that you can do to be able to interact with customers afterward, to get them to revisit your experience, to get them to think about it again. And it may be one that can lead to that transformation that is, at the end of your adroit phase, is generally you can't have one life transforming experience. Generally need a set of experiences, but that extending can lead into that next experience and the next one after that, to get people to go from where they are today to what they want to become. And that's where that transformation can happen.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I love that notion of extending. I think that's something that we don't concentrate on enough. There's always, you can give a takeaway when you leave, or, especially in B2B, it's really hard to extend that experience without being a pest, so it's, but if you can create something and maybe have another little giveaway later that expands upon whatever you talked about, I think that would be good for the B2B guys. In the museum business, and I can see extending through citizen science or other ways, or that they can connect back to the institution to help build the body of knowledge. Those kind of things seem to me they would work as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot in B2B. There's just a lot that can be done. And also think about, if your purpose is to have an enticing experience, a marketing experience, or a sales experience, and this can apply to retail as well, is then often, so we've sold them and now we're going to send them the offering, right? Or we're going to do it for it. And that's a way of extending also. When retailers ship things, one of the things they need to think about, is Apple. People talk about Apple as the unboxing experience. Right. So because they design everything again with intentionality about how you open it up. Well, everybody needs to think about the things we send to our customers. What is the experience in a box? What is the design of that, of how it opens up and what we say and so forth? There's just so much that can be done there that most people just leave that on the table, not recognizing that this is their first impression, right after they left. And what are you going to do there to really impress people, remind them of the live experience that they had with you, and then really begin to cement that relationship?
Yeah, I love it. And I love the Apple box, by the way. That's almost enough to get me to buy another product. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit, because 2020 has been probably the most unique year in my life, and probably in most. How has COVID affected the experience economy?
Just COVID has devastated the experience economy, at least the physical experience economy. I mean, it's all the experiences that have been hurt. It's the bars and restaurants, it's the nightclubs, the movie theaters, festivals, events, theme parks, museums. All of these have been affected. The only thing that haven't been is outdoor experiences like parks and recreation, like golfing. Golfing. The amount of golf rounds this year is like 50% more than last year. I mean, you look at it around the country, it's like 50% more than last year. Why? Because people could go do something. They could get outdoors where you have very little to almost no chance of catching the virus if you just take a few precautions and without even have to wear a mask. And so it's basically any place that people want to gather is a place that not very many people want to be. But still so it really has devastating experience center. So what it means is that people no longer are having experiences out there, they're having them in here. They're no longer public, but they're familial. This Thanksgiving, only the family, right, in our state of Minnesota is supposed to be able to get together. Nobody from even outside the household. We can't even have our kids and grandson over, according to the governor, and I would never go up against that. And then from physical to digital. So the digital experiences have exploded, right? Zoom, market cap up 700% because so many people are using it for this direct video interaction. Netflix, video games, streaming sites, all of these things are exploding because we still want to have our experiences. We crave our experiences. As social beings, we will always crave experiences and we'll always crave being with other people. So the COVID, I remember one headline in the New York Times, where they actually quoted me, where they talked about is it the end of the experience economy? And to which I say, no, it's not. Again, we're just moving the experiences in here, but in fact, it better not be, because without the recovery of the experience economy, you can have no recovery of the overall economy, because that's the part that's been devastated. You'll still have so many people out of work in that. And so you've got to have the recovery, and we need to have it too, because as Jim and I have been saying for over 25 years now, goods and services are no longer enough. Right? They're no longer enough for what people want. They're no longer enough to produce the amount of jobs that are needed, no longer enough for GDP. We have to have the experience sector. So it absolutely will be back. If you notice that almost every experience that opens up, no matter what the type of experience or whatever capacity it has, if 25% of people can go to a theme park, guess how many people are there next day, right? 25% of the capacity, and they're turning people away. Mm-hmm. The only exception to that has been movie theaters. Every time you open up a bar, restaurant, whatever the capacity is, people will be there because they crave these experiences. And once we get the population immunity it takes through so many people having it, and now through the wonderful vaccines that are coming out, then hopefully by this time next year that we understand that, okay, we've got this thing covered because of that, and we'll get back to if not sooner, we'll get back to having all these great experiences. We'll still change how we interact with a lot of people. Will be wearing masks. We're going to be washing our hands all the time. If we're sick, we're going to really stay home instead of before, like, oh no, I better go to work even if I got the sniffles. No, you really better stay home. That has changed. I think it'll be amazing how many fewer people will get flus next year and the years after because of that.
Right. Yeah. There's always a silver lining to things. But Jason, you got some questions?
Sure. I think it's a good time for this one. How can those who are designing or contributing to the design of public spaces help to reinvent experiences in a world where people need to feel together but need to remain safely distant?
It's a great question, and Craig and Jason, you may be better suited to answer this question than I am. But I will say that that's a necessary thing to think about how to do it, about how you keep people apart. One of the things it brings to mind is New York Times Square. When they closed off the streets, they opened up that. There was if I get this right, there was a lot of discussion about having to nail the chairs down. Right? Because people were going to take all the chairs, everything, which would have been horrible. And so one of the things is, can you make it malleable, make it programmable, make it so that people can change. So whatever unit want to be together, they can be together, and then they can be reconfigured for other uses. It'll be interesting to see what happens with like arenas and physical theaters and that sort of thing. They start to actually move people a little further apart to be able to handle this. But I assume for the most part, they're going to say, let's wait it out. But still, across many people and in many situations, there's going to be some reticence for that. So just asking the question is great to recognize that this is an issue. And again, maybe you guys have better answers.
Well, to answer that, I think a few things come to mind right away that ideas we've been playing with is, and you touched upon one of them, is flexibility
Yeah.
of space and how spaces need to change over time for different conditions. We also look more at indoor outdoor connections, like how can we
Right.
capitalize outdoor space, for the gatherings, and I think we have to re-examine. It's funny, in terms of office space, the trend was to get smaller and smaller.
Right.
And
And
now,
even hoteling where you're sharing the same desk, right? At different times.
exactly, and people organically gather, and how do people flow through a space, and where do we need to make spaces wider versus where we can be a little more narrower? I think we have to re-examine all those things, and any things in front of like reception areas, those need to be a little bit larger and get
Right.
people feel comfortable on maintaining some type of
Yeah, and
space.
that's a big thing, is just the size of the space so you feel more comfortable being there with other people.
Yes. So,
It's funny. I was thinking too is that this notion of a hybrid experiences too. Between digital and real. Digital would be really good for enticing. It'd be probably pretty good for extending, but the real experiences happened in the middle, and those are the ones that we've got to figure out how to design better.
Yep. Yep. And that's a beautiful point, that you exactly can have the enticing and the extending be done digitally for getting people to come to that physical experience.
Yeah.
oh, maybe one more question now, and then there'll be another one later on, I believe too. So, does it require a huge investment to stage an experience?
Doesn't necessarily. If you understand, again, the principle that work is theater, then you recognize that we don't have to do any capital changes. We don't have to change anything. We can just have this found space of where we're at if we direct our workers to act and help them perform on our business stage. So in that sense, it requires virtually nothing if you understand that principle of theater. You think about street theater, right? They just find places in a park somewhere or in a square, and then they create a great experience out of nothing, basically.
Right.
But the sky's the limit on how much money you could spend, right? How much money you can put into it. Again, Las Vegas being the premier example of that. You now have every casino that's been produced in the last 10, 20 years is over $1 billion, sometimes multiple billions of dollars. In the cruise ship business as well, there's been an arms race, and we make the bigger and more experiential ships. Which again are now, every one of them is over $1 billion when you come out of them. So you can spend as much or as little as you want, depending on the experience you want to create, the type of business you have, and so forth.
Yeah. I think one of the big aha moments I had from reading The Experience Economy had to do with, I think going into it, I would think of experiences or things we create, the places we design.
Mm.
However, it's really the design process in itself. Can that be experienced with our clients? And
Yes.
just that idea, I think, has made us all better in terms of providing experiences, which are part of the design process. Like,
Right.
so thank you.
One of our Experience Stager of the Year award winners, XP we call it. We've got 20 of them. Is the only one that was B2B is a company in Fort Collins, Colorado called TST Engineering, and they were landscape architects. Right? So not the buildings, but all the landscape for residential and commercial areas. And then they redesigned their place, their office environment. I love they called it an engineerium, right? The engineering, a place for engineering to happen. And they looked at all the research on colors and light and that to be able to create the right environment, to be able to, every room, every part of the process that you talk about, Jason, is done in a different room.
Mm-hmm.
So could they design that room for the process? One room is for blue sky thinking, another one is for contractual work, and so on and so forth. And then they have a signature moment, and the signature moment is my one stage dramatic structure model, right? Just what's the one thing that people remember? What's the one thing you want them to know? What's the one thing you want them to tell and talk about? And their signature moment is that whenever they meet a contract milestone, they go up to the second floor and then they slide back down to the first, right? They built a slide into their office. Everybody remembers that. And Craig, and this is like you're baking bread, is that they often have clients that don't have an appointment that show up and say, hey, I just love hanging around you guys. It's such a great place. Can I just spend a little time here? that's how you know you've got a great experience, because they value the time that they spend there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think maybe one more question, and then we'll go to some of the other ones from the audience. But so we live in a as you've already highlighted, a tourist destination, and there's other tourist venues throughout the United States. What's the next step for these people coming out of COVID and the transformation of the experience economy in these venues?
Well, first of all, particularly in COVID and coming out of COVID, they have to practice what I call safety theater, which is not just ensuring that people are safe, starting with your employees, because your employees aren't safe and they're not COVID free. Well, then your customers aren't going to be. So starting with employees and then customers is not just being safe, not just ensuring that they're safe, but demonstrating it, showing that they are, right? Making a show of it, so that people feel comfortable coming in. And it's like, I have taken 2 flights since this happened back in September. My wife and I went to Salt Lake City and up to Park City for a little vacation. And one is I've already read everything that the airlines are doing and how their air systems are, and I think they're one of the safest outside of I was going to say a hospital, but actually no, hospitals, there's too many sick people. But they're one of the safest places to be, right? They're probably better than your own home being in there. But you get in there, what's the first thing they do is they hand you a wipe, when they know darn well it's all been wiped out. And yet they hand you that wipe so you could do it over again. And then we sit down and my wife hands you another wipe and we do it all over again, right? You've got that's safety theater. And then it is helpful to redesign your offerings and think about how you're going to make them even better experience. How are you going to entice people out of their homes? I think bars and restaurants in particular, people have gotten used to, again, to cooking their own meals. To doing things. Maybe they actually enjoy the fact that, hey, we're gathered around in the kitchen or dining table, and we're having more family time. Maybe they're gonna like that. They're not gonna go out. So how do you entice them to go out? And that's what's staging a greater experience. And the way we put it in the new preview to the book is that you want to create experiences that are robust, cohesive, personal, dramatic, and even transformative. And we talked about robust as that 4E model. You want to hit the sweet spot of dramatic structure. We talked about being personal, it's customization, transformations. The one we did is cohesive, which is about the theme. It's coming up with the theme of the experience. That organizing principle allows you to decide what's in the experience, it's what's out. So if you've got an experience you never really thought about, oh, we just did all this stuff, but what actually is our theme? Right now would be a good time to come up with that. Is understand what that is. You don't necessarily have to tell it to everybody. I actually prefer companies don't tell what their theme is, because then it becomes a marketing tagline and you got to change it at some point, right? But have it internally. Everybody know what is the proposition to which we want to ascend, right? That's your theme, and how you then know what's in and what's out, and it guides how you do things. And we got 5 design principles of which we talked about engaging all 5 senses and mixing memorabilia as a couple of those. So work on those. And then lastly, I'll say you want to then renew your capabilities. And that's particularly digital, right? Again, people are buying more and more digital. They're shopping digitally. They're interacting digitally, having digital experiences. So how do you increase your capabilities, both for the enticing and the extending part, but also for hybrid experiences? I think for many places, particularly festivals, events, business conferences, and so forth, we'll go to a hybrid model where there's people there physically, however many feel comfortable, whatever capacity we can go to, they're there, they're live, but then we're simultaneously doing it digitally. And we now need to design for that as well, right, Craig? When you're designing places, design for the fact that, hey, we're going to be broadcasting from here. Every place is a broadcast stage now. So how do we get that design that so that we can able to do that effectively would be the other thing I would recommend.
Oh, those are such great thoughts. I think we take maybe one more question from the audience, and then we're going to wrap it up because I want to respect your time.
Right. We had one late one come in also, but I think we're getting close here. So one question is, I'm curious if Mr. Pine has thought about what comes after the customization of transformations, and when is the transformation economy book coming out?
Well, yeah, I see that's from anonymous attendees, so I'm not sure if this is a plant or what. But, so I mentioned that it's the fifth and final economic offering. I mentioned we always ask what next, so we only know it's the fifth and final economic offering because we asked what next and thought about it. And basically, the heuristic breaks down is that you can't commoditize a transformation, because with a transformation, the customer is the product. You're changing human beings, and you cannot commoditize human beings. We are inherently unique. And customization, how do you customize a transformation that would be something other than another transformation? So we thought long and hard about that, and we finally decided, we sort of threw up our hands and decided, well, the only thing you could imagine doing is that would go so far beyond customization to deserve a new level would be if you were perfecting people. And when you talk about perfecting, you're no longer talking about human economics. You're talking about the province of God. So he said, that's not possible. It breaks down. And then so it's a great question on transformation. It is the last two chapters of the experience economy. It's there. So we talk about it there now. We've thought about writing a book, maybe impossible, but at least I want to write it. I want to write the book all over again from scratch, talking about here's how I talk about it now, which is different than when we first wrote it, and include different models, include models from authenticity, include models from my book, Infinite Possibility, on fusing the real and the virtual, include more on transformations. So we may just extend it there instead of write a separate book on it. But I get that question a lot, and maybe it deserves its own book. That's true.
Well, I know we know a lot of guys that are going to buy it. I'll tell you that. So
Super, thank you.
if you write it. Any other questions, Jason?
Maybe this last one. How do you think the experience economy interfaces with human-centered design philosophy?
How can they not be synergistic, right? Experiences are all about the individual human being who is having that experience. I mentioned before that experiences happen inside of us, right? Commodities, goods, services exist outside of us, but experiences happen inside of us, and transformations change us from the inside out. So you have to design for that individual living, breathing human being. And so I think it's a great fit with human-centered design and the experience economy, including transformations.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've reached our end of our time. And Joe, I want to thank you so much for the quality of the time that you gave us today. And I hope the people that joined us found some value and potentially were even transformed by this discussion. And when I say transformation, once you learn certain things, you can't see them the other way. And that's transformation, I think. And I highly recommend that everybody in the audience go buy the book and read it again and again. And I know that you'll find it is time well invested.
Can I briefly say?
Yes.
I don't know if you did that on purpose, but I got to say, right? Talked about services, time well saved, experiences, time well spent, transformations, time well invested. So beautiful.
Yes, thanks. Well, this is our last Fireside Chat of the year, guys. And wow, I think we really ended up with a fantastic one. So I'm glad everybody was able to be involved. Stay tuned for our next one, which is going to be in January. We're going to take the month of December off. We're going to dig deeper on experiences. We're going to try to bring in some designers of experiences. We've already lined up a speaker from Aldrich Pears Associates who designs cultural institutions and cultural experiences. We've already lined up somebody from the House of V, which is a digital experience company. We're working on getting a hospitality designer and a retail designer, and we'll have that in January. So please, get ready to think about this one in another way. So thank you so much. I want to wish you all a happy and safe holiday season, and everybody stay well. We'll get through this. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks.